Hello and welcome back. We hope you enjoyed the pieces you just listened to. I'm sitting here in our segment titled Show and Tell with the makers and the performers of the music you just heard. I'm going to do a little circle and introduce everybody in that piece, and then we're going to get right to it. First, we had a piece called Notes, and it consisted of 7 notes by Lautaro. 6 notes by Lautaro.
I just told you.
I know you just told me. It's been a long day, guys. It's the third day.
But it was originally 7 and then we scratched one.
There you go. I'm just
Right.
super
Yeah.
intuitive. I'm super intuitive. But guys, we had 6 notes by Lautaro. Off to a great start. Then we had Negerahai Rangin
Bravo.
by Ramin, played, among others, by Pedro from Matt Saxophone Quartet. Then we had a piece called Kaleidoscope. Then we had For Andreas by Raivis. And then we had Kaleidoscope by Sylvia. And then we had another piece called Saxophone Quartet by Raivis, also played by Pedro, amongst others, from the Matt Saxophone Quartet. Every piece was incredible.
Matt Saxophone Quartet, Andreas.
Yes. So why don't we begin with the first piece, namely Lautaro.
Oh.
So tell us, why was it 6 and not 7?
Why would,
Or rather, why was 6 afraid of 7?
well,
'Cause
the
7
way
ain't 9.
I wrote this piece was that I used it kind of like a diary. I just wrote when I felt like it, which was very different from last year, where I kind of tried to pull out everything from my insides into something. And this year was kind of different, because Richard told me that I shouldn't be so miserable. Hey Richard.
Hey. I know that he's watching us, so I know that.
So he gave me this advice of, just write when you really feel like it. Like, try, I thought, I should try that for a while. And then I just wrote when I felt like it, and I had like these voice memos and these small notes. And then after, 5 months, I looked at them and I chose the best ones. And,
What happened to the 7th one?
well, the 7 one, I'm going there. The 7 one, what happened is I chose 7 that I liked. And then it came to recording, because we recorded everything in Theaterzal with a click track, all the instruments separately. And that one just didn't work, we tried to record it, just didn't work as well as I thought. So we just cut it out because, it wasn't as good.
It is what it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
But this is a really interesting point. I heard that you guys recorded it in the way that you would record a pop song, and then you filmed the video on top of it.
Yeah.
What was the decision behind this? Yeah,
That's,
it wasn't.
That's really wow.
And that's
You
also
didn't
what
I didn't know
you
that.
can hear. It was really
Wow.
good.
I didn't know.
Yeah, that was mainly for sound's sake. Like, I wanted this very closed sound, and I wanted to have control over the mixing so that later I can add stuff. Also, I wanted to say this version you heard is probably not the final version I want to release, because I had the time pressure to finish it. The mixing, I had like a week, so it was kind of like, just get it together.
Thank you, Composers Festival.
Yeah. So my plan for next year is just to finish it in a more professional way, master it, maybe add some layers to it, and release it as a small EP. And the reason we recorded the video also after was that we could also have more control over the aesthetic of the video. Because if you look at the pictures from the recording, it's like 24 mics everywhere, all the curtains like open in the theaters all, and we thought that the music also deserved or would be potentiated by, is that a word? By like a strong aesthetic image.
Yeah, it worked really well, especially to draw the focus in on particular elements.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm really happy with the video as well.
Yeah, wow.
It was really well
Like
done.
the beginning event, like how they started everything.
Yeah.
Like how you started, I mean, everything. Video, maybe we can mention the.
Yes, we were gonna mention at the end as well,
Because,
but
yeah.
big props to the video makers, Elia and Yorgos, and also the recording team and the mixing and mastering team, namely Kun and Primo and Aryan, right? And Ati and Lautaro
And Philip.
and Philip.
And Philip, yeah.
Everybody did such a good
Yeah.
job, and I think it really reflected.
Really.
Especially what I really enjoyed is that every piece seemed to be so well catered to the piece's needs uniquely. It was really in symbiosis, your video and the music, and I think it was really effective.
Cool.
And they were all slightly different also,
Exactly.
which is just actually very hard to do
Yeah,
for like one space. Well, not one space, two spaces, but still.
yeah. And also you don't have to, like as a maker, you don't have to go out of your way like that, but they did.
Yeah,
And that,
that's enthusiasm.
That's
Chef's kiss.
exactly. Incredible.
the last thing I wanted to say is that it felt like a meditation. And it kind of sounds like the writing experience.
Yeah, I think generally my instrumental music, my non-song music, comes to me in very quiet and like introverted early mornings or early late nights moments, and it's good that I came across, because for me the whole journey is how do I get to translate that very personal moment into something that can be understood by other people, because that personal moment has very specific circumstances, like of my life, of my environment, of what I imagine. So it's good that you say that you felt it was kind of a meditation. I'm happy.
It did feel like an early
I feel
morning,
like that.
and where you've woken up before everybody, and you're sitting outside and it's quiet, and you hear like very...
Recording the memo.
Yeah. I'm excited to hear the final version then.
Yeah.
No, I have a question for you, because the name of the piece is Notes.
Yeah.
Also tomorrow you have another piece called Notes.
Yeah.
And they have some numbers in front of it. What is it about?
The numbers are the dates.
Ah, so you really...
So it's the dates that I have the first sketch of the given material.
Nice.
It's very simple, but it's kind of what I...
But in line with the concept.
Yeah, it's not really like it wasn't like I thought, oh, I'm gonna write this diary piece and I'm gonna put these titles. I just wrote it and then I thought, oh shit, what do I do now? And then like I wasn't gonna name it an artistic, romantic title to each one of them because it just didn't make sense to me. So that was kind of a simple catalog kind of name. For tomorrow, it's the same piece. Something important to me as well is that the given notes, like the pitches and the rhythm, have to work by themselves without kind of instrumentation. That's something that was kind of unconscious to me for a while, but I kind of been realizing that's important to me. So if it works for this duo, it should work for the organ tomorrow. So that's
That's
kind of
fascinating.
my
So
view.
the idea then is that you could put on a different jacket on any given composition and it would stand because the bread and bones are the same.
Yeah, I think some jackets would be better than others. And I would be the curator of those given jackets. But I also found it interesting, like for me it's very contrasting. The duo, like all the instruments that you heard have like an attack and a long decay. Like the guitar is like, and right?
True.
And the organ is the complete opposite. Like you have almost no attack and like a held, like you take it out and it stops. So it was nice to kind of, have the two pieces in very, for me, contrasting settings. And tomorrow it's only 4 of them. So it's also like some of them didn't work in the organ. So that's why there's only 4 of them.
And the other thing is that now, also I'm remembering, because yesterday you had another piece.
Yeah.
And I think it was really different. How do you really make this 2 different worlds? I think somebody even yesterday asked it. Was that me? It was me, also from another one.
For Bella.
From yeah, exactly. But I'm really curious how you kind of switch between these 2.
It's probably a long answer.
Oh, yeah.
Go for it.
Can you have
But
it?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. maybe not.
Next question.
You can answer it in any way that you would like.
How do I switch? What do I decide is from one or for the other?
Yeah, how is the process? Especially
Yeah.
when you get inspired.
Yeah. I kind of don't choose about it. It just kind of happens, and that's probably from my background. Like I played violin from 6 to 10, and then I have this classical background, and then I also have this pop culture background. So I kind of have those two always in my mind. So I think one of them talks sometimes, the other one talks the other time, and then I kind of have to discern between them. But recently they've been more one person.
I was about to say, I got the impression, in fact, that you could hear that it was Lao in both worlds. It's just that they had a different context, almost.
Yeah. But before they were a bit more separate, and recently they've been kind of shifting a bit more. Like I could hear myself singing. Maybe it would be a bit lame, but like the difference between one of these small pieces and a song is smaller than it was 2 years ago, I think. And
do you like that? Is that a good thing?
I don't have an opinion about it.
It just
It
is.
just is. Maybe in 2 years it'll be completely different. But that's the way it is now.
That's also just an interesting approach, to take the music as it comes and work with it rather than try to mold it to a certain expectation of yours.
It's tricky, I think, because sometimes you think you know what it wants to say, but you're not really listening. That's what I experienced.
And it references back to the concept of composition as meditation. How does one meditate with one's music, and how does one listen?
Exactly.
But
Fun fact.
Fun fact.
My father doesn't really listen to contemporary classical music at all, okay? He listens to lounge music when he's at the sauna. But we were watching the thing, and he loved your piece, Lau.
Yes!
Wow.
He was like, this is pure music, short and controlled and clear. And then during my piece, I think he fell asleep until the end of the concert.
He left the house.
So that was really nice.
Oh no.
I was like,
There you
So,
go.
Wow, that's amazing.
I'm really happy to hear that, actually. Great. Because it's not really, I also was thinking, it's not really classical and contemporary music anymore.
Oh, yeah.
I heard that you described it as
But-
Renaissance counterpoint, but pop.
Who said that?
nice.
I also heard it somewhere.
No?
That's good. That's good. That's
Yeah?
so good.
Oh, that wasn't from you, but I thought it was. I thought that was very appropriate.
That's good.
Yeah, but what I meant is not that your music is classical contemporary, just that my father doesn't listen very actively to
No,
new
but
music.
I'm happy to hear someone that has, like, it's not a goal, but, like, I'm not thinking, oh, I want to cater to this or to that, but it's nice to hear that the music kind of could
Spoke.
reach further than our little elitist circle.
Well, that's what's so interesting, I think, the capacity for music to reach beyond borders, bridge.
Whoa, thank you.
Boom!
Wow, that.
Speaking of borders,
Yeah.
let's talk about your piece. And why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, very, very beautiful bridge. So,
Well, you're about
They
to
gotta-
illuminate the bridge.
Exactly.
I haven't illuminated it yet, but it's there.
So yeah, Negare Rangin is a composition that I got inspired by the folk music of Iran, and
Where you're from?
exactly from Iran. I'm from Iran, and we have a like it's a treasure to listen to. I mean, the folk music generally is like treasure. I think even Bela Bartok mentioned it somewhere. That's like we have to really come back and really check it out because it's so much melodies and so much. It's beautiful and. You know,
And the Western conservatories, we don't talk about it.
at all, I think. I mean, I'm really lucky because here in the Conservatorium of Amsterdam, we have our teachers who are also looking at the other cultures, and I think it's really important. So in this piece, I started to kind of get inspired by them and to kind of make this connection between West and East. Yeah, because the title is it's a personal impression. So it was technically was my impressions from those pieces. That was the beginning.
Because the title, I'm not going to say it again. Can you say it?
Nigorهای رنگی.
I'm not going to say it again. Because you say it so beautifully. You say it so beautifully. But there's that means something, and I thought this was a really beautiful touch. What does that mean?
نگارهای رنگی means colorful impressions. And what is it very exciting about folk music? I mean, the culture, because there is so much culture behind folk music, behind, let's say, folklore, is that there are so many stories.
So lived in.
Exactly, and there are so many stories that have been told within the generations all the time, and then people are really like singing those melodies for maybe 100,000 years, and so there is literally a huge history behind it, and like when I'm thinking about it, like also, for instance, when you go to the villages and when you go to other cities, you see different colors, different things, different way of expressions, different. Even different food. If you go to Iran, food is amazing, like unbelievable, and you see so many colors. So that was the reason that I call it نگارهای رنگین, as a colorful impressions. So that
was very, very fitting, and I think it's also really important and really special to be showcasing music like this, because it is so strong and so under talked about.
Exactly, and what is it very interesting?
Underexplored.
Exactly, because
in the Western world.
Exactly. I think they started, for instance, someone like Bela Bartok really started to write it down and to kind of understand what is going on in the folk music. But I think we should do the same with the other cultures as well. I had a very, very good teacher called Hamed Sabet. Maybe he's watching, I'm not sure, but if he is, hey, hi. And he was a film composer, and then in his music, especially in his young, like when he was younger, he was going around Iran and he was recording all those music.
Oh, wow!
From the native people, like the real musicians, like folk musicians.
There's a legacy of this that's really fantastic, the recording of folk music.
Because literally there are specific people that know the knowledge, but then
without whom?
Exactly, and it's not written, so you cannot really access to it. And then if they pass away or something, then it's lost. Gone. So we really need people to really record it and really analyze it. And
you're doing that.
In some ways, I think. I'll come back to it. The thing is, I'm getting impression of it, I'm getting inspired by it, but not really imitating it. And for instance, the folk music of Iran is really based on modes, we call it maqam. And I'm not really using it in that way, but I'm trying to kind of westernize it, I mean, kind of tell it in my own way.
Yeah.
Which, because I'm kind of
you're also
educated in a Western classical way, so I'm like making this connection.
Exactly.
But it's really important to understand what is going on in the piece and in the folk music.
It's also just a delight to listen to.
Thank you so much. Wow.
I love the energy of it. It's really nice. My question is, how do you, because you're from Iran and you have all this culture behind you, but you're, as you said, you grew up in this classical Western. But how do you relate personally to this Western tradition?
That's a very
because that's not something that's from that's not the music from your country. So it's very interesting that you came here and then revisited your own culture through the prism of like.
Of the
what
Western.
You've been taught. So it's very, how do you relate to that?
Yeah, very good question. What happened was when I was like 6 years old or something, I started to learn piano, how to play piano, and then from that time I was really learning based on Western music, Mozart, Chopin, Beethoven. So I was really learning it and I was loving it. So when I grew up, I started to learn more and more about the Western music. So maybe that was the main reason that I really grew up with the Western music, but I always heard, I was always hearing the music and listening to the...
So for you it was like one world as well, like in a way.
You cannot, in a way, not really, not really one world, but I really, in my music, I really try to kind of combine these two and really making a unity. So when you listen to it, I don't think that somebody can say, yeah, that's really Persian music, this is real folk music, and I think you cannot even say it's a Western classical music, so it's like something in between.
Well, this is what's so interesting, I think, about today's cultural and musical climate, is that the easier transportation becomes, the harder it is to pinpoint and isolate specific cultures. And yet, within the current political climate, that's the danger, right? That we're alienating oneself. We're saying, we're us and they are them.
Exactly.
Whereas in every human being, I mean, we're sitting in a room with so many cultures.
Yeah.
And within every single human being, the cultures are meshed. So within you, it's not, as you say, you're not imitating Iranian music, but you're also not imitating Western music, and they're coming together. And I think that's also a really interesting psychological process.
Exactly.
And it's very, I am moved by it as somebody who's also, mixed ethnicity and background. The fact that you would consciously transfer and transform your DNA and your legacy.
That's a very beautiful way of.
I was very moved.
I really like the way that you are kind of explaining what is going on. Exactly, especially DNA.
Write that down.
My hands are
Exactly. Can you write it down for me, Con, in the background? In my next interview, I'm going to use it.
Okay.
But,
let me do a rewrite.
Yeah, exactly. No, but that's really true because, I remember that we have another composer, a really famous composer called Reza Vali. He's in America now, and he's really working on folk music. And he's writing orchestral pieces, very big pieces, ensemble chamber music, but based on folk music. And he's in one of his interviews, I'm not quoting, I don't remember it completely, but in one of his interviews, he's saying that we should look at the folk music, for instance, of Iran or any other culture, not with the Western eye and Western theory, let's say, but really with the theory of that culture, because there are so many idioms behind it. Maybe if it's possible for Kun,
a great bridge.
Exactly, because maybe Kun can play a very small. It's a very small video.
This was the concept of show and tell is that those who would like to bring an object to talk about, or a link, or an image, and this relates really well to the work.
Exactly. So before maybe starting, no, maybe we can play it and then we can come back to it. So.
Beautiful.
Yeah, this is, I think, really touching.
What is this? What are we
doing? Exactly. This is in the third movement of my piece, Negare Rangin. I got really inspired by this specific dance. This is a dance from north east part of Iran, and it's a Kurmanji dance. It's Kurmanji. Yeah, exactly, Kurmanji, and it's a kind of Kurdish dance. And what is so exciting about it? First of all, the first thing that you kind of notice is the different colors and the rhythms, and they're dancing in this way. And when we were working, maybe I can also make a bridge to Pedro.
I must add that Ramin even asked us to dance like this while we played.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, they were singing.
This is beautiful.
Yeah, I mean,
because music dances too, right? It moves you.
And then the rhythms, and as a composer, I think you also have, you are also a composer, Kun, also behind the scene. As a composer, it's really hard to think that, for instance, when you're listening to this, you can listen to it for hours and hours without really getting tired. And I think as an artist, it's such a hard thing because I'm really struggling with it. Like, but these people in the folk music, these musicians are incredible, and they are a composer and a musician themselves, and they can just build up something and which is so beautiful, so pure. So I was really impressed by it. Like the first time that I listened to this one, it was by accident. I just found it on internet, googling, and I was so impressed the way that they are dancing, and there are so many also rules about it, how they dance, like how many claps, and they even do something like this, the way that they are like making the.
Oh, that's you!
Yeah, that's me. So they are doing. So it's really part of it, and they are making syncopation, this kind of thing. So I was really thinking that okay, this is what I really want to do. For instance, with the third movement, and came with Matt Saxophone Quartet. So
who did an excellent job.
Oh yeah,
Really
like
fantastic.
I was so honored and so happy that you really did it. It's unbelievable.
Also mentioned that what's interesting about the Mad Saxophone Quartet is that they also have that you guys work a lot with folk traditions.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, it's true. It's something that we like a lot, and actually our collaboration with Ramin started actually in a school project in a saxophone week. The saxophone department did kind of a deal with the composers department, and together. We did a Minute Maid Day.
Nice.
So we would work with the composer in the morning. Were you there?
I was.
There.
Yes.
Raivis was there.
Raivis was there.
Definitely.
It was great. So we would work with the composer in the morning, explain them how we can do this and that. Then they would write a 1 minute piece, and then concert in the end of the day.
Wow!
That piece. So yeah, so that's how we met Ramin.
I remember that we were sitting here, I think, or somewhere like this, and you mentioned that who wants to write for Max Saxophone Quartet? I was like, me.
Yeah, exactly.
All the time.
And Ramin was very enthusiastic about it, and yeah, it was a very fortunate encounter, and he wrote a very, very good minute piece, and then we were preparing our first CD recording, which is called Ciudades, which means cities. Yeah, sure.
Object number 2.
Exactly. So it's this CD that Ramin is showing, and we were our idea was to record a piece by.
Why don't we show it to the
Let
audience?
me show it to the audience.
Yeah, so
Camera 2.
it's this one.
And if you wait for a bit, we'll even type it into the chat.
Exactly. I think Kun has so many things now, so many tasks to do.
Either after the stream or during, but in any case,
Yeah. Maybe
Look it
write
up.
this. You can write it in the chat.
Exactly. So, and our idea was to record as a central piece, let's say, because it was the biggest one, piece which is called Ciudades, which gives the name for the CD, and it's written by Guillermo Lago, and Guillermo Lago is also a composer but also a saxophone player, also our teacher, is the Willem van Merwijk is his name, and Guillermo Lago is the translation in Spanish.
nice.
And his alter ego. So yeah, and this piece Ciudades, he wrote these pieces, 6 movements. It's an open piece, so whenever he feels like he writes a new movement. So and each movement is inspired on a different city which he visited or which he got inspired. So we decided we'll record this piece, and then we wanted to build a CD around this, and we also wanted to put music. So yeah, the encounter with Ramin. The encounter with Ramin was
Passing it to our one and only tech guy, who's also the chat guy, who's also many other
With
things.
so many arms.
And he's gonna type the name into the chat, just so you know.
cool. And yeah, and then we decided, yeah, we really loved what Ramin did, and it had a very clear folk music influence, of course, And actually, the Minute Maid you did was the let's
first
say
movement.
the first movement. Then you developed the
Exactly.
Minute Maid, but it was the first movement. So we really loved it, and we told him, yeah, Ramin, we would like to have a bigger piece. Can you do it, please?
I mean, we would like to have
Oh,
a
wow.
bigger piece.
That was such an emotional day for me.
Yeah.
I was really happy, really like.
So that
It paid
that was
off.
it. Yeah, it
Really
was a
good.
very happy encounter and a very good relation that we developed. Also, friendship-wise, I think, and it was also one of our first collaborations. We also worked with another composer, former student from
Exactly.
the composer department, Nuno Lobo.
No, Lobo, I think he's watching us. Hello.
And he also wrote a piece inspired on his city of Porto in Portugal. So yeah, our idea was we want to be on our debut CD. We want to be bold and have the courage to ask to young composers to write pieces for us, which sometimes people may advise not to do it just because the debut CD there's all this. I will not say drama, but respect about the debut CD because it shows what you are as a group, and but we decided no, that's what we want, and
Maybe that's what you are as well.
and it
a
ended up
beautiful
being
thing to be.
what we are, and also the process of creating something with the composers, and also we wanted to have this clear folk music or inspiration in a place, in a city, in a culture which is so rich. And I must say that sometimes I feel from a performer side that maybe it's sometimes daring for a composer to take the risk to work and write something inspired on a cultural or a folk song, because it might be too obvious, but I think it's a beautiful translation that can happen, and and I think it can be very beautiful, because in the end, culture is everything. It's the piece that is being played in Conservatorium, and also a piece, the Kurmanji dance, in being played by players that don't know to read
Exactly.
a score, and
That's the exciting thing.
and
That's
everything is culture, and and this sometimes might be daring for the composers to, it might be a risk, but I think it's very beautiful.
But what I think is so fascinating and also a bit odd is that if we ask then why is it risky, where did this come from? And the answer, I think, is from the fact that most establishments that train young musicians are training in a very particular vein, and so the risk is established because that you don't hear much of that, and so you think,
And I think
Is there gonna be
sometimes
space for it?
the students are asked, or the establishment asks students and young composers, musicians, to do something with meaning, or with meaning, or a
concept.
Yeah, with a concept, or a very intelligent, and
the intellect.
the intellect must be very high.
Yeah.
Must mean something very, very rich, and I think that sometimes is a wall in this process of creation, and that's what I think. And also from another performance side, is very good for us to have a clear concept about the piece, even if the concept is not having a concept at all, but for a performer to have the concept, in my opinion, and that's the way how our quartet works, and lots of colleagues that we have. It's very important to have a clear concept, because then you can understand it. First you have to understand it, and only after you understand that, you can translate that to the audience, and and then the audience will understand as well. So there's this this relation.
It's also very moving to me that an initiative like this comes both from you, but also that these connections are looked for. I mean, how wonderful is it that you guys met each other, that your saxophone quartet looks for young composers.
Mm-hmm.
Chapeau, props
Sure, yeah,
to both of you.
yeah, bravo.
Yeah.
Matt Saxophone Quartet.
It's all of you,
To all of you.
obviously. Anybody who puts their soul into music, I mean.
And I must say that, of course, after Ramin and Nuno, we work with the other composer. We are working as well as Raivis, of course, and we talked with the Raivis maybe 1 or 2 years ago, but then there's always this problem of agendas, and finally this year we had the opportunity to play his piece a bit online, remotely due to COVID, but
Yes.
it was really, really great. And it's something that we really like to it's very present on our daily routine. I can say of the quartet to work with new composers, new pieces because then you are creating something and putting your stamp on it.
It's exciting,
yeah.
too. But you said that you guys did this remotely, because Raivis is zooming us, I don't know which camera, is zooming us from Latvia.
Yeah.
How was this, tell us, Raivis, about your piece and about this collaboration. You had 2 collaborations, but let's start with the one that you just on.
Yes. So actually the start was, like Pedro said as well, with Ramin in the Minute Maid festival, where I fell in love with saxophones on that day. I wrote a little piece. And I was just like, these instruments can do so many things. And yeah, somehow I was just really, really inspired by it. And somehow I just imagined, I think I spoke with you guys, but I'm not sure if it was very direct, very much, but I just knew that I wanted to write a saxophone quartet. And I was like, I'm going to write a saxophone quartet. So I basically wrote by myself, like even without communicating. And then I think it was, that love happened quick. And that was like 2 months and I wrote this quartet. And I was just like, yay, great.
Oh, wow.
The background is not as cultural as was discussed before.
It's Raivis
but it was exactly. But it was really, I really loved how they developed. For example, the first movement was something that really surprised me. Sostenuto, exactly. And there's a subtitle that I will add. There's no one but time passing by. That sort of invokes this feeling that there's only this cold time passing by. You're sitting alone, sort of. And it's very existentialist. But I wanted to convey that feeling. And how I managed to compose it also was, I was learning stuff on Ableton, my second day probably. I found a very nice tone sound effect. And I just improvised this on 4 voices on like one day. And I was like, this fits so perfectly with saxophones. Yeah. And I'm so happy with it. So that came quite spontaneously. But super happy with that movement. And then the second movement was very more inspired by Reiki style, I would say, minimalist approach. It was more like putting building blocks. So basically the main way how I build it is that you have like a motive, and then you put different motives at different times, almost like in a canon, and they are of different lengths. So you have harmonic shifts, not vertical, but more like diagonal and horizontal. So you have these shifts of harmonies in different places. So I really loved that way of working, and basically was building it like a block.
It kind of felt like that as well, like it was constantly reacting off of one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like that. And that's the saxophone quartet.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And what was interesting, what you just said about the layering, that's a great tie-in to your other piece, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
For Andreas. First of all, who's Andreas?
Andreas Mahler, the brilliant saxophonist who performed the piece. And he's also the co-composer, I would title him, because he composed the live electronics, patches, sounds, and installed and put it all together. So this was all live. This was performed live. Nothing was pre-recorded. Of course, the patches and everything was constructed before. But to be honest, I have no understanding of Max MSP. It's just like an alien world. So it was really fun to meet up with Andreas and be like, listen, you do that job. I have no idea what it is. I write my stuff. And then we put it together, which was quite spontaneous, but it really worked well.
We have a question.
Yeah.
But how did you connect these two then? To connect
The live electronics and the part.
Yes, yeah. Like how did you really collaborate on it?
So basically, I wrote like a 6-part music with. So our first idea was to use delay. So you play something and that is being repeated as an echo, and then you can also, and then as you play, you record in the patch those delays, and then you can put them afterwards in different places. For example, like in the climax point, there were a lot of voices together sounding like in a tutti, and those were voices used from what he played in the beginning. So that's quite smart with live electronics.
It's
it's quite complex what he was doing. Sorry?
I was just saying that it's you're constructing a world.
Yeah. And he did all of that, which was quite complex. But yeah, so I gave him five saxophone parts basically, and then sort of like just draw where this would be repeated, where this would be echoed, and stuff like that. And he translated that into the electronic world. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Somehow I think that the way that a composer and, for instance, the composer and the musicians are working is such a fascinating process. Because not only the final result, but that process is so important. Like, I think also for you it's the same.
The way you communicate, it can be through a score, it can be...
Exactly.
It can also be just talking or singing it, you know.
Exactly. Because yesterday, for instance, in your piece,
Yeah.
I think that was really communication with your band.
Oh, but I
No?
also have to give props to them because also they kind of write their own parts with that, right? But also today, it's interesting. Like I kind of rethought the way I communicate with musicians when you work with musicians that you know so well that you don't have to put in the score. You have to play this note this way. Then a whole other kind of communication, or like you can explore other ways of communicating. You can just like tell them, yeah, that note needs to be this soft and has to be that long, but
I find this also an interesting distinction between classical formal music and the way in which composers often communicate with instrumentalists versus I think folk music is in a sense pop music. It's pop music of that culture. It's just that pop music has been degraded to a particular word. But in essence, this practice of coming together with instrumentalists and saying, this is the world, now let's play together, is also similar to what was going on in the video that we saw of the people dancing.
yeah, and then also who's the composer becomes more malleable.
Yeah, and also the priority. Is
Yeah.
it about the ownership or is it about creating this moment?
Exactly. That thing about this communication, and then you know each other, so you kind of go for it. Exactly. In folk music also, I don't think that those people who are the one in the movie, the musicians, I don't think that they are really saying, okay, from tomorrow at 8 we're gonna show up and we're gonna practice. It's just they're just get together and they're really doing it.
Yeah.
For hours.
It's a really interesting balance though, because I think it's also a massive leap of faith to say, I don't know anything about this technology, but here's a mate, I trust you to be able to feel me and communicate with me enough to create something with me, and to just jump into the abyss like that. That's
exactly. I think you need a level of trust, and also just trusting yourself that I have what I have, and I will just show it to you, and we will, it's music in the end, so we will find a language together. At first I was a bit like, I need to do this homework. I did the homework in the process, but maybe not learning a very complex music producing machine. But exactly. through trust it happens.
Maybe can I tell something about this communication part with Matt?
Please.
Because I have it's all on my mind all the time. Like I remember in the second movement, I really wanted a specific emotional kind of way of like expression, very specific, like something that is really connected to that like idiom of that folk music. And then I was remembering that I told you that. Pedro, I want like to be like this, and then you listen to the music, and then you really created it with that way of expression.
Yeah.
You guys didn't use traditional instruments, though, did you?
No.
And yet it sounded like we were there.
Especially.
It's like
It made me nostalgic for. Sorry, it made me nostalgic for culture that. Wait, sorry, I interrupted.
I mean, finish it. I like it. Nostalgic about?
I come from Tajikistan. But I don't know a lot of this culture, and yet your music made me nostalgic for this.
You
and
mentioned it during the.
You feel when something's honestly being explored. It's not like you're trying to make this culture. You're exploring and playing through this.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was
Exactly. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just. Again, it's a translation. You try to do a translation, and in this case, it was through our saxophones. And of course, we listen many times to the inspiration and to this kind of folk songs. And also, Ramin told us the stories about and the second one, Delaman. It's
coming from the north of Iran, and we have this place called Delaman, and Delaman Khani is singing Delaman. It's a very very popular way of singing. It's like one of it's in an area, and then there is a story about it. There was a very strong lady in the history that was fighting against the government, called Haybat, and this song is coming from that. This kind of folk song coming from that story, and I remember in my childhood. I don't know how much time, but in my childhood, there was this series called After the Rain. And a very incredible singer called Feridun Pourreza, he was singing it in the beginning of this series. And it was so touching. I think I was 6 years old, and all these years I remember that singing. Mm-hmm. So for this project, for the Mad Saxophone Quartet, I thought that I would love to bring back that feeling I had during all these years. Mm-hmm. And I remember that for that part, because also there was another project that Katarina, also saxophone player in the Max Saxophone Quartet, also wanted to play a part in the social, and she said that, Ramin, just sit here and show me the expression, just show it to me. Yeah. And
that's the best language that you can give is. And I remember I listened many times, and we would record and send to Ramin. Ramin is it, and then you start to feel in your blood, and take it as your own, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then you just do it. And there's not so much of a science, but but this thing. I mean, maybe it's also because our cultural background. Maybe this Portuguese. Culture, but we are also a bit nostalgic, and right. And we have this the fado, which is a musical genre, very sad and talking about the fate. But in the end, it's we are.
Well, and this is what's so interesting. It's everybody has some sort of. It's exactly, and I think. It's so funny, it's weird to me that we ostracize one another, because there's a common culture, namely that we are all coming from a culture, that we are all coming from the culture of humanity. And I think this is what's so interesting about exploring folklore music, is that it really taps into that. It doesn't matter what culture it's from, it's tapping into something very intimate and innate to human nature. And that's so moving, it crosses bridges on levels beyond music. So important too. Mm. But this is such a moving conversation. I can
Yeah,
talk about this
I
for
love it.
hours and hours, and we should. Maybe we should have a different show where we just talk about folklore music and the many cultures within the conservatory.
Exactly.
But there's one more thing that we need to mention before we wrap it up, namely
Questions.
that as well. There's one more thing. There's one more thing. Your opera. We wanted to tell everybody about Ramin's opera.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
thanks so much. I completely forgot that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, because there is a connection between this piece, the second movement, and the opera. There was this year we had an opera in the Opera Forward Festival together with an incredible director called Ramin, and I was really honored to work with him. And yeah, that's the, as you can see, that's the poster of it. And then together with Soed Shayeste, he's an electronic musician, live electronic musician. We were working on this specific opera, and due to the situation of this pandemic, we just recorded the first act of the opera, and then we thought that let's tell the real story because it's based on a very old story. Let's tell the story. So that was the time that we asked also Nilüfer, other incredible actress, to tell us the story, to kind of come on the stage and tell us the story. And that was a moment that we thought that, okay, this is really connected to the second movement and also the story of the second movement that we just said. So again, we kind of put it, like I just changed a bit of the piece and then put it in that context of like connected to that piece.
Give us the logistics. Where can people look this up? When can they listen to it?
It was in the Opera Forward Festival.
Get the plug going, guys.
It was in the Opera Forward Festival, but it will come back live very soon. I think next month.
Stay tuned.
Yeah,
How do people stay tuned? Do you have a website they can subscribe
Yes.
to?
Yeah, they can check my website. Type my name, Google it.
Do you know your website name?
Yes, it's okay. That's a good question. It's ramin-amintafreshi.com. And
We're gonna put it in the chat.
yeah. And yeah, so we had this collaboration with lots of musicians, and it was such a exciting experience.
We have so many talented composers at the conservatory. It's crippling. If you guys have been following all of the episodes, you'll find that the music programming has been so diverse and so rich, and every evening, I'm not going to swear, but it delivers. And tonight is no exception.
Exactly. And
are we going to listen to it? Oh, these are photos.
I think there are photos from the opera.
Beautiful. So
Oh,
excited
the singer.
to. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, and so it was such an incredible also a collaboration with the Matt Saxophone Quartet.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And questions.
Questions? Do we have questions? Okay, I think they have been sent to my portable device. Yes. Okay.
Technology here is incredible.
We have many questions. Thank you so much for being so interactive, you guys.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow. Okay. Let's see. Where should we begin? We have so many. Oh, you guys. Okay.
This is becoming popular.
Okay, we're gonna do the first one first. Lautaro. Samuela asks, what was the concept behind the video? We mentioned this briefly at the beginning, but we're gonna reiterate.
There wasn't really a concept, but there was the music, and it was nice because we could play the music on these big speakers, and we showed the music to the filmmakers.
Which is pre-recorded.
Yeah, and they were there while we were recording a bit, so they had the vibe also.
I mean, Elia and Jorgis.
Yeah, so
Chapeau.
we just kind of briefly talked.
Aforementioned.
Like, they set up the instruments as they wanted, and we talked about it briefly, but it was all very fast and very, we didn't have like a big concept of it, but it turned out great.
Yeah, exactly. So they also
Yeah.
put the instruments themselves, like here
Yeah.
it is, and the lights.
I mean, we had like I think you saw these panels on the floor with the amps. That was there because of sound reasons, like sound installation reasons, and then they just stay there because they looked nice. Also, the thing on the piano was there for a sound reason, and then we asked, do you want it, do you don't want it? And they were like, no, leave it on. So yeah, it was all very natural.
Wow.
That's perhaps also, that was the concept, to follow the natural instinct of the...
Yeah, I guess.
I
guess.
love also that the musicians were so still that it was almost like choreography. Like
Yeah.
they were almost.
Yeah, the only thing I think I said to Ali was also I just wanted a shot of David's finger going into the key. Like that was the image. That was the only visual image I had. Like a finger just pressing the key in a close up of that. And, yeah.
Okay,
That was really stressful for David. Should I play that?
We did a lot of
finger
things.
was really the hardest thing, the simple ones. Okay, I have another one. Also from Sam Waller, but it's a great question, so I'm going to ask it. Open question. Both Ramin and Raivis contributed 2 great works to the saxophone quartet literature. Does the youthfulness of the saxophone quartet as a genre influence your compositional process?
Oh yeah.
How so?
I would say both genre, but I think the nature of the instrument is somehow so fiery, so articulate, so blasty. Yeah.
There was this moment, that I was asking in the third movement, that I was asking that, can you do this or do that? Like, there is no limit for this, for the saxophone quartet, especially for Matt. So they could do anything, and we were really without any limit, like without any boundaries, like do anything, and they could make it.
And to be honest, also, I didn't really listen to any saxophone quartets before I started writing. I don't know.
That's
It just
amazing.
seemed like such a versatile instrument, as Ramin said. So, yeah.
Honestly, I listened to Mr. William Lago, definitely. I mean, I love that piece to that. And you said that it's based on the cities. I think Mr. Mervak should also come and visit us in Tehran, Shiraz, and write one from Iran. Because, maybe you can tell him.
Yeah,
I don't think that he's on the...
Open call. You heard it here first, folks. Okay. This is a fun one. Would you rather have 100-meter long legs or 100-meter long arms?
Wow.
If you're the coordinator, like coordinating the Composers Festival,
You already do.
arms.
Yeah.
50-50.
That you already have it. Have fun.
We're going to mention this tomorrow as well, but Ramin, who we're interviewing today, is also the organizer of this festival, and he's been doing an outstanding job. So I want everybody at home to be sending lots of karmic energy to this man. And Kuhn is the operator that you cannot see, but you can feel his presence because he's making all of this possible
Everything.
on his own for no possible reason other than he's a great human being. So again, all the love and respect.
Incredible also was you and Frida. Really, we had an amazing team at the Composers Festival to make all this thing happen. Also, great support from the Conservatorium of Amsterdam and Oracle Park tomorrow. So
Stay tuned. Tomorrow's our last episode, but we're not there.
Yeah,
We're gonna do the whole spiel in a second. We have another question from a young tuba player who's come to the conservatory, and he, Sigurd, has asked, what's your best tips for musicians who want to get in contact with and persuade composers to write new music for them?
Raivis, I have to think about it.
I think just bother them.
But also, I think all composers are always looking for players, right? There's always-
Exactly. I think it's like the best thing that can happen if there are musicians coming.
Yeah.
Just like composers are waiting with open arms, mostly. So I think, and then if you can figure out something, logistics or projects, that's just the second thing. But interest, enthusiasm, it's gold.
Yeah, I think that during these 4 years I was extremely lucky to kind of work with these musicians here who were really welcoming the new music, and they were really feeling connected. I think finding the person or the ensemble who is really attached to your aesthetic is such an important thing.
Human connection also.
Yeah, I think. Also, the way that the ensemble thinks and how their aesthetic also is really important. Like when I was listening to Matt Saxophone Quartet from the beginning, I was really connected to what they are doing. So I think this really makes this how to say connection between the composer and the musicians.
Mhm.
We have one last question, and then we have to wrap it up, my friends. It's so much fun to speak every time, but we got to wrap it up. The last question
Goes
is to Ramin.
Oh,
Ramin, can you tell us a bit more about how you chose which elements from Persian music to include in your quartet, and how did you balance that with your Western side?
oh wow,
Big
beautiful
questions.
Beautiful question.
In 1 minute.
Go.
Yeah, 30 seconds. So, what is so important for me, generally in music, is the melody and the harmony and the rhythm, which is, of course, the fundamental of the music, maybe in a classical way. So, so I was really trying to find those elements in the folk music to understand how they are developing a melody. In the music that, for instance, in the video clip that we heard, the musicians are playing one melody over and over. It's just repeating all the time. But you can listen to it you can listen to it for an hour. So I was really impressed, and I was really questioning myself that how is that possible? What they are doing? And then I started to kind of translate it and find a way to bring it to the Western way. Also, very last thing, I really like this contrapuntal moves. That each one of the instruments, namely mezzo saxophone, each one of them is the soloist by themselves. They are really playing something, and you can listen to each one of them separately, and then it makes sense. And when they are coming together, so it makes such an impression on me.
It's so strong.
Yeah, I think it's it's very it makes me really exciting in that sense.
I wish we could talk for hours. We
Yeah,
should have
we
another episode where we just talk about this. But, ladies and gentlemen, that was it. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your questions. I had a wonderful time. After every one of these episodes,
Amazing time.
I feel so moved and filled up with love for the music. Because that's what this is, right? We're all doing this because we love music and we want to talk about it. And it has to be talked about more. So in that spirit, please join us for our very last episode of this Composers Festival tomorrow on Sunday at 8 p.m. We're going to venture into the belly of the Orgel Park. For those of you who don't know in the audience, the Orgel Park is a beautiful place in Amsterdam filled with organs, because orgel is organ in Dutch. And we're going to be hearing pieces written for these organs. We've had beautiful programs. If you want to rewatch them, just go to the website www.composersfestival.nl. Let us know what you thought. Stay in contact with our socials. We're on Facebook, Instagram, the whole lot under New Music Arena. Many talented composers.
When there was this line that you mentioned also in the website. When there is no life.
In the absence of live music, the Composers Festival aims to bring the music to you.
It's like the Hunger Games.
Yeah. No, but real talk, it's been an absolute pleasure. We really hope you'll join us tomorrow evening. Once again, with Ramin, with Pedro, with Lautaro, with Raivis. My name's Jasmine. We hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye. Good night.
Bye.